What's up everybody, Noble Comics here with the next round of the Tournament of Power. Today's a big one. We have Superman versus Thanos. We're going to go through these characters, their feats, skills, abilities, all that, and ultimately, who would win if they were to fight. First, the results of the last match. We had Despero versus Sentry, and you all voted on that, and Sentry is going to be moving forward to the next round. But with that out of the way, let's get into today's fight. So, Superman versus Thanos, two incredibly powerful beings from DC and Marvel Comics, respectively, with decades and decades of feats to look at, specifically here talking about Superman. But we will go ahead and start with Thanos, who of course is also known as the Mad Titan, and probably most famously is known for gathering the Infinity Stones in the Infinity Gauntlet and wreaking havoc on the Marvel Universe. But even without the gauntlet, the dude is an absolute menace, and in this fight, of course, he would not have the Infinity Gauntlet. But he doesn't really need it. If we look at things that Thanos has done before, we can see that he is clearly very impressive, going over some of Thanos' best matchups that he's had before. Now, of course, Thanos has fought just about everybody that Marvel can throw at him. He's beat the crap out of Thor before and taken huge hits from him. He's fought Silver Surfer pretty regularly. He's fought the entire Avengers at once. He's fought Hulk, Beta Ray Bill, and even more powerful cosmic beings like Ego the Living Planet he's fought against, and he's even fought against Galactus. He was able to damage him and was able to take damage from him. Obviously, he was losing that fight and he wouldn't have won, but it was still impressive that he was able to dish out some attacks against him and be able to take some attacks back as well. We've also seen Thanos tank insane attacks like I just talked about. Like, for example, he withstood a point-blank scream from Black Bolt, which is incredibly impressive. Now, I think the power of Black Bolt's voice does definitely fluctuate in the comics, but for example, we've seen Black Bolt wipe out Apocalypse with just a whisper. In the World War Hulk storyline, he almost KO'd World War Hulk with a whisper, and it was sort of implied that a Savage Hulk would have been KO'd. And previously, a scream from Black Bolt was enough to destroy a Celestial, so Thanos tanking this point-blank scream is incredibly impressive. We've also seen Thanos fly through a black hole before and be pretty much unscathed. He survived a hit from the Cosmic Cube, which is like insane reality-altering outerversal levels of power. He's survived being wiped out of existence before too during different universal collapses, because he essentially cannot die. He's also taken hits from a giant space laser from Annihilus, which was one-shotting heavy hitters like Hyperion and Thor, and Thanos was taking hit after hit after hit, just proving that his durability is so much higher than everybody else. But he's not just durable. Like I said, he's been able to fight some of the most powerful heroes that Marvel has to offer, and some of the most powerful villains, including two very notable fights. One against Thor, who had the Power Stone, which boosts his power level tremendously higher. Thanos was able to go toe-to-toe with him, take hits from him, block hits from him, and the whole time it seemed like he was enjoying it. He's also fought his own son, Thane, who had the Phoenix Force, and was able to beat him, which again is incredibly impressive. The Phoenix Force is one of the most powerful things in the Marvel Universe. He's fought against Odin and taken huge hits from him, and again, Odin is Skyfather tier, who's fought against Galactus before. And he has fought and beaten the champion of the universe, who is a very powerful opponent, notably because he's extremely skilled in combat, like hand-to-hand combat, and Thanos was skilled enough to be able to beat the crap out of him, essentially. With his energy manipulation, we've seen him be able to casually blow back both Thor and the Thing with a single blast, be able to damage beings like the Fallen One, again being able to damage people like Galactus. He's able to absorb Silver Surfer's energy attacks and redirect them and hurt him. And he's able to construct shields that again can withstand the attacks of the Hulk and Thor, even with the Power Stone. With his mental abilities, he's been able to go toe-to-toe with Moondragon, a very powerful psychic telepath, and is able to stop and manipulate magical items like Beta Ray Bill's hammer, and is gifted in some sorcery abilities on his own. And another thing that is sort of notable for this fight in particular is he has gone up against Gladiator, taken some huge hits from him, and was able to defeat him in combat. I'll talk about why that's important here in a little bit. Overall, the picture of Thanos, to the surprise of no one, is that the dude's a beast, right? He can tank pretty much any attack from any being in the Marvel Universe, most of them anyway. He's able to dish out attacks back, he can fight and beat pretty much anyone, and he's fought and beaten the most powerful heroes that Marvel has to offer, all at the same time. He's extremely smart, skilled, durable, and strong, and is fast enough to keep up with all these opponents as well and to overpower them, with the unique ability to also withstand reality warping and ending calamities. He is a very impressive specimen. And on the other side, speaking of impressive, we of course have Superman. Now, one thing when it comes to Superman that I want to talk about here at the top is that there's a few things with this character that people often talk about when he's in a versus battle setting. And this stems from the fact that Superman has had like consistent comic book appearances for almost 100 years now. So kind of like The Simpsons, he's just done everything that there is to do. So his feats are pretty much limitless and he's just done everything. The Superman I want to talk about is Rebirth Superman, who is sort of a merge of the Post-Crisis and New 52 characters. So all of those feats are up for grabs. And even trying to restrain it to just that, there's so much we can talk about with the character. That said, a lot of the discourse around Superman when it comes to versus battles is that Superman can do anything, right? Like, well, in this fight, Superman can speed blitz him and lobotomize him in like an attosecond. Superman can fly to a blue sun, get extra powers, and then come back and fight. Superman can use his Kryptonian martial arts. Superman can do anything, but I think we have to remember that Superman is a character, not just a set of powers and abilities, and so we're expecting both Thanos and Superman to behave as if they are their own character right there. Superman's going to behave as Superman would behave. Same thing with Thanos. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Superman. One of, if not the most impressive hero out of DC Comics. Of course, he really needs no introduction, but let's just talk about some of the things that he's been able to do. Strength-wise, we've seen him lifting literal hundreds of quintillions of tons with one hand. He's been able to lift the heavens themselves, which is like infinite weight, holding a book with infinite pages, being able to hold a black hole, like insane strength feats that just cannot be ignored. Speed-wise, we know that he can keep up with the likes of the Flash, who's multi times faster than the speed of light, and we've seen Superman act similarly, be able to travel that fast. We've seen him threaten somebody, saying that he could react within a femtosecond, which is so small there's no point in even listing out all the zeros for that reaction time. He's been able to fly across the solar system, galaxy, universe faster than almost any other superhero that DC can offer. He's incredibly fast when it comes to travel. Now, that's often conflated with combat speed, which I've talked about before, where I don't think Superman's combat speed is necessarily that fast, because while we have seen him do things like punching Doomsday thousands of times per second, doing insane damage to him, we've also seen him not react fast enough to dodge a hit from Batman when he was mind-controlled and should very well be in the mental state to just attack and kill the guy. We've actually seen that multiple times where Batman is able to land hits on Superman, who should be so much faster that shouldn't be possible. We've also seen Superman get hit with kryptonite bullets, so I think it is fair to say that his travel speed is not directly correlating with his actual combat speed. But that doesn't really matter too much because he is so fast. I don't think he's going to be at a disadvantage by any means. Durability-wise, we've seen him take hits from people like Darkseid, taking his Omega beams, hits from people like Doomsday, who's able to wipe out the entire Justice League. He's taken hits from other members of the League themselves, like Wonder Woman, Shazam, Martian Manhunter, just to name a few, and was able to lay them all out on his own. We've seen him hit so hard that it could shatter small planets, and hit hard enough to rock, again, the most powerful beings that DC has to offer, like Darkseid, like Wonder Woman, like Doomsday. And one of his biggest feats, recently we did see him KO the World Forger. Now in this feat he was boosted and amped by flying through multiple yellow suns, but it is nonetheless impressive he was able to temporarily stop the World Forger, who was like the architect of the entire DC multiverse, an incredibly powerful outer versal character. Superman is just one of those characters that really doesn't get beaten very often, and even when he does, he just comes back stronger, and he always wins in the end. I mean, he's Superman. There's really no limit to his strength, speed, durability. He always rises to the occasion and does end up always winning. He is also extremely skilled. We do know that he does know how to fight. He's learned different fighting techniques from people like Batman that he maybe does actually utilize I do know there's a whole thing about Kryptonian martial arts, but my problem with that is that one writer, one time in one comic, decided that Superman knew martial arts, and it's never used or brought up or demonstrated ever again. So I don't think that it's quite fair to say that he's like a martial arts master. We have seen him do things like move fast enough to phase through attacks, and of course he's fast enough to keep up with some of the most powerful, fastest beings in DC and can fight them, so he does have that going for him. He's also fought Despero, who's wiped out the entire Justice League at once. Again, we can't forget Darkseid, true Darkseid, being able to fight against him is extremely impressive. The character Damage, who's pretty much a Hulk ripoff, he's been able to fight. It almost feels reductive to try and list out Superman's feats because he's done so much. There's literally just decades and decades of stuff that he's done where it's kind of like, you know, anything you can think of. Like, he's survived an exploding star, he survived going through a black hole, he's held open a black hole, he's fought and defeated everybody in DC that he could potentially fight and defeat. He's done it all because he is Superman. So when it comes down to who would actually win between these two characters, it does become sort of a difficult, tough fight. Not going to sugarcoat it. There's so much going for each character, it can be sort of hard to pick. However, I think that there are some things that can sort of clarify it and make the decision a little bit easier. For example, I think Superman is roughly a Herald tier character, along the likes of Silver Surfer, Thor, the Hulk, characters like this in that typical power level. If anything, he's at the high end of that because he is able to compete solo with more Skyfather tier characters like Darkseid, for example. And on Thanos' side, we've seen him routinely go up against these characters and win. He's beaten Silver Surfer, he's beaten Thor. I don't think there's been an instance of those two characters defeating Thanos, for example. And Gladiator, who I mentioned earlier, is sort of a carbon copy of Superman for Marvel Comics. Very similar character. Gladiator is like the Superman level of power, and while he was able to compete pretty well with Thanos, Thanos did end up winning. There also have been some Marvel DC crossovers, and I know most of them are non-canon, but I want to say that the Avengers cross with Justice League from the 90s was actually considered canon for both universes, if I'm not mistaken. And in that one, we did see Thanos fighting the Justice League, and he was manhandling people like Shazam, who again is comparable power level to someone like Superman, which would seem to indicate that Thanos is more powerful than Superman. And even if you make the argument that Superman is more powerful than the Herald tier, that he's above that, I think that Thanos being able to fight Thor with the Power Stone, for example, fighting Thane with the Phoenix Force, accounts for that. Because I would say that Thor with the Power Stone is more powerful than any like issue-to-issue iteration of Superman, whether that's Post-Crisis, New 52, Rebirth, whatever that is. I would say that that Thor surely is more powerful, right? And he was unable to win. Though I will say I don't think that Thanos has every advantage. I think speed-wise, Superman is probably better than him. Strength-wise, Superman is surely stronger. But I think Thanos does have power output. I think he does have durability. I think he does have intelligence and skill on his side. And I think that Superman would be one of the more impressive beings that he's ever fought. But I don't see Superman winning a 1v1 against the Mad Titan. Now, again, if you go back to the mentality that Superman can do anything, I think that from that mentality, like if this is just a bloodlusted Superman, he's out of character. Superman can fly to a blue sun and then come back and lobotomize him and speed blitz him in 1 femtosecond, and he'll use all his Kryptonian martial arts on him, stuff like that. It's like, sure, technically, I guess Superman can do that just because it's been stated in the comics at least once, but I don't think Superman would do that. And my evidence for that is that he never has done that. That's not how he's ever behaved. And if that is a character behaving that way, well, then it's really no longer Superman. Superman acts and behaves and thinks in a certain way. And if the fight does go on long enough, I could see Superman getting to that level where he's essentially bloodlusted, kind of like we saw against Doomsday, but I don't see that necessarily giving him the victory. Not to mention the fact that Thanos has superior energy abilities, whether that's absorbing attacks from Superman or dishing out his own attacks, not to mention his telepathic and mental abilities that he has an advantage on over Superman, or the fact that Thanos does have some training in the mystic arts, which Superman would be vulnerable to. And that is all sort of how Thanos fights versus Superman, right? If you're saying, well, he would speed blitz and rip his head off or something, it's like that's a fan fiction. That's not the actual character, right? If your version of Superman winning this fight is having him behave in a way that he's never behaved before, well, that's not really Superman fighting. That's like your headcanon fan fiction Superman fighting. And none of this is meant to downplay the character. I really just want to clarify where I'm coming from, because Superman is kind of a controversial figure when it comes to versus battles, because I think of this misunderstanding of this mentality. He is incredibly powerful. Up close, he would do crazy damage, like we saw him do against Doomsday, again, punching him thousands of times, like in 1 second. Being able to punch hard enough to shatter planets, and can take similar damage back. But Thanos has dealt with that before. Again, a full-blown scream from Black Bolt, taking full power hits from Thor, even Thor with the Power Stone. Full power hits from Thane with the Phoenix Force. Hits from the Hulk. Characters who are at least on par or outclass Superman. Now, if this were in the comics, surely Superman would win because, you know, he's the protagonist and everything. But outside of that, in an actual fight, I do see Thanos taking this like 8 or 9 out of 10 times. Because again, even in DC Comics, we saw Thanos trashing the likes of Shazam. Now, I know Shazam isn't on the same level as Superman, but he's at least very comparable in terms of strength, speed, durability, and power output. So the win condition here for Superman, I think, is less likely to occur, which I think that he would use his superior speed to rush in, deal as much damage as possible in like 1 second, right? Hitting him as hard as he can, as fast as he can, doing his best to dodge attacks, which he definitely, again, has a speed advantage. I think he could dodge some attacks and wail on the guy hard enough until he actually goes down. But Thanos, his win condition, right, is being able to tank all that and then crush Superman in the meantime, or use his energy to manipulate him, or his mental abilities to manipulate him, and ultimately defeat him. And I think Thanos' win condition is more likely. Because is Superman here, is he going to be hitting harder than Thor, harder than Galactus, harder than Ego the Living Planet, harder than Black Bolt? I don't know. And even if he is, I still think that Thanos could tank it, given what we've seen from the character so far. So all in all, even Rebirth Superman, who is one of the more powerful iterations of the character, I think he is outclassed here, in most regards. And while there is a version of him, like if he was completely bloodlusted and everything, I think a version of him could win against Thanos, but I think the majority of the time, Thanos is going to take it. But you all get to go vote, cast your votes in the community page on my YouTube channel. You all get to vote for who moves on in the bracket, but let me know what you guys think. Let me know who would win, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.